Are you tired of playing Battletech with the only objective being to destroy each other's units? Do you want to add more tactical flexibility to your list and get rewarded for it? Do you want to force the enemy to come to the center of the board or to complete some other objective? Or are you looking for interesting things that your players can do in a campaign? On today's episode of the Mech Lab, we'll be going over how to create fun and balanced scenarios to play with your friends. So the way that most people play Battletech when they start out is you just take two lances of mechs and you fight with them until one or the other side is destroyed. And that's fine. It's a great way to learn the game, but it lacks a lot of nuance. Certainly just having a battle against an enemy unit is fine for your campaign, but what about some missions where you destroy enemy supply depots or attack a unit that is raiding your own supplies and keep them from escaping? These are some of the things that we'll be discussing today. So first off, let's go into the most recent tournament for the MRC that I participated in and got third place. This is the first mission here, and it's a very interesting one with a lot of nuance to it. Signal trace and breakthrough. Basically, we need to go to designated spots on the board and scan them in order to gain information. And you can use this in a number of different ways. Downloading files from an enemy base or a crashed plane, something like that on the board that you need to get into with your computer, pull the data out, and then escape, which is what this mission essentially is. There's randomly moving objectives. You can see that they go into different hex numbers, and basically what these amount to is a bunch of hexes around the middle of the board. So you need to scan the signal, and rolling a 7+ on 2d6 is what you need to get, and you add +2 to your roll if you did not attack or perform any non-move action. Essentially, you kick the mech into autopilot, and instead of manning the weapons, you're typing away furiously on your computer like a 90s hacker movie. And you get an extra +2 if you have an active probe, so some kind of advanced sensor package. Then after you have successfully scanned 3 times, you can't score by scanning, but now can gain points by having units leave via their opponent's board edge. So you have to break through to the opponent's side of the board. There's lots of ways to use this kind of mission in a campaign. Going and getting important intel from a base on the other side of the map, and then you have to escape on your board edge would be one way of doing things. And then there's multiple ways of making that more interesting. You could have some sentry turrets at the base and then have enemy reinforcements drop behind you and try and cut you off from your escape point. And then from a competitive / just pickup game style of things, it is a great mission because it encourages a lot of mobility. You need to move around to the different spots, and it also encourages you to bring active probes, which don't actually serve much of a purpose if you're just using the basic Battletech rules. So I love to see active probes being encouraged. I will note that this tournament is also using double blind rules, so active probes are actually also better at picking up enemy units that are invisible to you. So all of this is great stuff. I love the little secondary objectives down here. If you fail to do all of the scans that you need to do, you can still get some points by leaving the opponent's board edge. Essentially, if you get screwed over by the mission, you can still manage to claw back a couple of extra points here. And then at the end of the game, if one unit between both players is still alive on the board, the owner gains 5 points. So if you got a mech with a leg knocked off and the enemy just chose to ignore it, you can totally just get a couple of extra points for that. Then we've got a nice capture the flag mission. There's a lot of different variations on this, but Wolvowl, the guy that made this tournament packet, I think has the best version that I've seen. You have a base on each side of the map that is a designated hex, and in each base there are 3 flags. And if you have flags in your base, you get 10 objective points at the end of the game, and if you're carrying a flag, you get 5 objective points. And then again, to pick them up, you need a 2d6 roll of a 7, but there's some bonuses that you can get. -2 to the DC, this means dice check, so essentially it goes from a 7 to a 5 if you have -2. So if you have one hand actuator, if you have an unjammed active probe, if you don't perform any actions such as attacks or spotting, and then if you're infantry, battle armor, or a ground vehicle, all of these gain a bonus. Probably just to offset the fact that mechs can get a bonus for having a hand actuator. I really like this as a competitive format because it really encourages mobility, and you have to go to the enemy. So there's a lot of different strategies that you can adopt with this. You can hunker down around your own flag and just try and hold on to your own points while sending out like one mobility unit and try and just destroy any enemies that steal flags from you, and then just pick them up and put them back in your own receptacle. Or you can go super aggressive and go for the enemy's flags and try and just stop the enemy from getting your flags back to your side of the board. Or you can go really aggressive and invade the enemy's territory, try and hold down their base, and take any of the flags that they take from your side back from them. And then if you enter the base hex, you crushed the puppy orphanage, which has just become a little bit of a joke among my Battletech RPG players and myself. And then Lego My Ego, causing an enemy unit to drop a flag will give you bonus points. But capture the flag is also a really great way of having like a steal supplies type of mission. Having a hand actuator or a probe allowing you to scan enemies' supplies in their supply dump so that you can pick them up and grab them and run away with them is really cool. This is another mission from a different mission packet that we had called Death Race Relay, and it is another example of this kind of a mission where you need to gather the data, but you could make the data easily just be supplies in a supply dump or a downed dropship or something, and then you need the unit holding the data or the supplies to return to your starting board edge, and then you score points, or maybe you get like extra salvage or extra C-bills at the end of the mission. I did something like this and had a random dice roll to determine what's in the crate, and it was 1 to 6 of the campaign currency that I use called G-bills. Okay, now this is our first mission that isn't really suitable for a narrative campaign, and it's because it's pretty much completely gamified. So you have your commander, which is the best skilled pilot that you have. You could also do it where it's your most expensive unit. I've seen people do that as well. And hex 1609 and all hexes within 2 hexes of it are the scoring zone. So this is the hill in the King of the Hill, and your commander scores bonus points, and you compare the amount of points that each player has at the end of the round. So crippled units cannot score, but for every unit that you have in the zone that is not the commander, you get 5 points. If your commander's in the zone, you get 10 points. So let's say I had my commander in 2 units, that's 20 points for me, but the enemy had 2 non-commander units in the center, that's 10 points for them. So at the end of the round, I score 10 points. And then you also get bonus points for crippling and destroying the enemy commander unit. And then we have the secondary bonus objectives where you can get bonus points for crippling units that are on the objective, and if you spend 5 consecutive turns without leaving the objective, you get an extra 5 points for that as well. So I guess technically you could use this in a campaign if you had like 2 sides trying to use E-War and hacking each other to try and keep one another from gathering some information from like a black box from a downed VTOL or dropship or something like that. But I think that this probably just works the best in a tournament or semi-competitive game or just a pickup game. If you go to the MRC, you're going to find big lists of mission types that you can use, and I would highly recommend checking out some of their tournament packets and recommended missions that they have. And what I would do if you just have a pick up and play kind of group at your local game store is create yourselves a mission packet and balance all of the missions between missions that require mobility, like Death Race Relay, for example, and missions that require you to hold a certain part of the board, like King of the Hill. And then have everyone create their lists before you roll for the objective, and then you play whatever objective that you rolled. Maybe you have a mission packet of 8 different missions between Death Race Relay, maybe you've got some kind of multiple King of the Hill where there's like 2 or 3 different zones that you need to hold. That's what domination is. Maybe you've got to capture the flag and a King of the Hill, and maybe you've got a couple different variations on capture the flag where the flag is in the center and you need to bring it back to your base that is in your deployment zone, or you have your bases in each other's deployment zones and you have to go and get them from each side of the board, like it is in creative appropriations here. Essentially, you want to encourage a variety of types of units in list building rather than just all 4/6 brawlers or all super fast mechs, because a bunch of phantoms are going to run around the board really quickly and be very good at missions like creative appropriations appropriations or signal trace, but they're not going to do that well in King of the Hill because they don't have the staying power and the armor. And if you're making a mission packet like this, I would probably also have some kind of like friendly agreement that you're not going to just bring like 50 clan large pulse lasers and that's your entire list. Having limits on the amount of jumping units that you can have, having artillery limits, and having limits on pulse lasers and other cheesy stuff like precision ammo plus targeting computers, or even just targeting computers plus pulse lasers. Really, really good idea in my opinion. Also, having a maximum number of units is usually a good idea. I find 6 is pretty good. Also enforcing the 1-step or 2-step skill for piloting and gunnery, so you can have a 3-4 pilot or a 3-5 pilot, but you couldn't have a 1-5 pilot, so you can't just use tanks to like cheese gunnery super hard, since tanks don't often need good driving skill. Also, when you're designing this, you have to figure out how you're going to do maps, and the way that this tournament did it was you roll 2d6, and whoever wins chooses their board edge and chooses their map, and then the loser chooses their map on the other side of the board. So we end up with 2 standard 16 by 17 hex maps next to one another, and each player gets to choose a hex map that helps their play style. So maybe you want to choose one with some hills so that you can use 1-high hills for cover. Maybe you've got snipers, so you want lots of heavy woods near the back line of your map. What this does is it allows for some strategy in choosing your own terrain, which is very nice. You could also randomly generate the map, which would be a lot less fair, perhaps, but could be a little bit more fun for a random pickup game. I also love these bonus victory points here. These are a great idea in my opinion. Just encourage people to not take cheesy stuff, and both players will generally have a bit more fun because they're not dealing with some ultra try-hard cheeselord list. So I think that kind of mostly covers pickup games and even tournaments. You want to have a set list of missions that you can choose from or roll randomly for, and have some limitations on what kind of horrible cheese that you can bring, unless you really want to face off against 3 riflemen, 2 Cs, and get spammed with pulse lasers all day. And have a good balance between the missions of encouraging mobility and encouraging tanky frontline brawlers. That way you get really nice balanced lists with a mix of different unit speeds and unit rolls. But campaigns are a little bit different. You want to have a certain amount of verisimilitude and believability when it comes to a campaign, which is why I mentioned the alternatives to these where maybe you're picking up supplies or raiding enemy supply depots. This is the map for my most recent mission that I ran in my Battletech campaign, and the enemies started down in the south, the players started up in the north, and they got to choose 3 different buildings to put autocannon turrets on, which were acting as anti-air defense batteries that could still participate in the battle and add a little bit of damage. And their objective was to stop the enemy from destroying these buildings, which it ended up being this building here, this here, and then I think it was this one. And what I've learned in my time GMing Battletech is that it's very difficult to stop an enemy force from destroying buildings. These are stationary targets. They only take between like 50 and 100 damage typically to destroy, and it's very difficult to miss them with your weapons. And if you're right next to them, you automatically hit with everything. So buildings get destroyed very quickly, and that is a problem because it makes it really difficult to do a base defense mission where the players are the ones defending the base. Every single mission so far that I have run that was a base defense mission has resulted in a defeat for the defenders, which has led me to believe that without incredibly overwhelming odds, defending the base is almost impossible because the enemies will just ignore you, run up and start kicking and shooting the buildings, and then just leave. They're gonna retreat to their deployment zone. Maybe you destroy most of the enemies, but you have failed your objective. So when you're designing missions, keep that in mind. Bases, either attack or defense, tends to be the majority of the missions that you run other than just straight up fights when you're doing a campaign. Because the other gamified way of doing things of capture the flag or King of the Hill skill is not narratively satisfying. These are not typically things that you would be doing in a military action. So keep that in mind. Base defense missions, very difficult for the defender. You can virtually guarantee that the defender will lose unless you have an insanely tough building, like 300 construction factor or something like that. And another thing as the GM is I would highly recommend having reinforcements show up during missions as a way to allow your players to feel like badasses taking on massive amounts of forces without actually overwhelming them. It's pretty surprising how much one lance of mechs can take on when it's fed to them piecemeal rather than being overwhelmed all at once. So have them start fighting off one lance of medium mechs with their heavy lance, and then start having maybe a lance of VTOLs shows up as the first reinforcements, and then a lance of tanks shows up. How do you like to run games at your table? And what kind of campaign missions do you usually run? Let me know in the comments. And while you're down there, remember to leave a like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel quite a bit. Speaking of subscribers, we have hit 2.8k subs. Thank you very much, everyone. We're gonna continue to make videos for you as long as you keep supporting me, so thank you very much. Make sure you go and check out the live tab on my channel. I've been streaming a lot lately. If you like strategy games, there's definitely something there for you. Whether you're into Battletech, Warhammer, or whatever, I've been playing a lot of very cool strategy games lately, and I think that you would enjoy some of these streams. I stream 6:30 p.m. EST most nights of the week, except for Monday and Tuesday typically. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great day, everyone.